Montreal may be trying to get rid of pit bulls, but at least we're keeping the festivals. It's time for another podcast. Not quite live from Forget the Box Studios in Montreal. This is the FTB Podcast, the only podcast you're listening to right now. All right, let's meet our panel.
I'm Mirna Djukic, and I write for the news section at Forget the Box.
Hi, I'm Ertekin, and I'm the managing editor at Forget the Box.
And I'm Jason C. McLean, your host of the podcast and editor-in-chief of Forget the Box. And we're recording this on Canada Day weekend. It's July the 3rd, Sunday evening. Canada Day is also famously in Quebec known as Moving Day. And a big story from a few years ago, which is still currently happening, is that a lot of people leave their companion animals, their pets, behind when they move because of no pet clauses. And that's still an issue, but there's a bigger issue when it comes to pets, and that's Montreal trying to ban pit bulls. Hannah Besseau has this report.
I never thought it would happen here. I didn't think Montreal was the kind of city that would have such a conservative reaction.
Mayor Denis Coderre will seek approval from city councillors this September regarding the ban of pit bulls. The ban would apply across the city's 19 boroughs and would require pit bulls and certain other breeds to be registered, spayed, or neutered, and muzzled when in public. The proposed ban has increased outrage and discussion from the pit bull and pet owner community.
My name is Maery Morrison, and I own a pit bull. You can't believe everything the media says, and the media has been selling this vicious pit bull story for years, and people have been accepting it. If you look at temperament tests, if you look at bite percentages, there's irrefutable evidence that, pit bulls are dogs, and like any dog, there are good owners and bad owners, and any dog can have a behavioral issue. They've actually scored above average on most temperament tests, and I'd be like, have you actually met a pit bull? It's a lot of sensationalization, and I feel like people really need to look past that and educate themselves. The problem is almost always on the other end of the leash, and it has nothing to do with breed.
According to CBC, unlike Quebec City, where the ban will force owners to get rid of their pit bulls by January, Montreal plans to allow existing owners to keep their dogs under certain conditions.
So, Denis Coderre wants to ban pit bulls, and a lot of people, at least the people I talk to, aren't very happy. Now, Mirna, you actually did a bit of digging, and you have some facts on this.
I did, because actually there is just no data supporting breed-specific legislation. We know that pit bulls are not the dogs who bite the most, and people were saying, yeah, but they bite really hard. And it's true, they bite harder than Chihuahuas, but there's not a lot of real studies. There's one from National Geographic from 2005 comparing pit bulls, Rottweilers, and German Shepherds. And pit bull came last. So both Rottweilers and German Shepherds bite harder than pit bulls. And all studies show that race, the dog breed, is not a reliable predictor for the dog aggressivity.
Yeah.
So there's no data. There was one spot of data that was quoted a lot to support the legislation against pit bull, and it's in the United States, and the number was that 65% of death caused by dog bites in the U.S. would have been caused by pit bulls, and that's a really scary number. But the thing is, that number is just not true. It's from media reports.
Yeah.
So it's the number of reported deaths in the media. And so it's just not really reliable at all. In fact, there's another study that compared the reports between themselves. Mm-hmm. And it found that only 18% of the reports had reliably identified the breed of the dog. So there's just no data supporting the legislation. It's just to appease the public, and it's not evidence-based at all.
Yeah, well, it's not evidence-based, but I think the bigger correlation would be people like bad owners who choose a breed because they have a strong bite or something, and they want to use the dog to attack. And the problem has to be the dog owners, not the dogs themselves. I mean, it's if we want to have dogs as pets, we shouldn't be picky. I mean, a pit bull is a type of dog, but it's not the same as saying having like a tiger as a pet. That is a dangerous pet. I mean, people have had, I think there was some movie star that had a tiger as a pet, but a tiger is a dangerous pet. But a pit bull is a dog. It's like, and I see more, I've known people, I have friends who have pit bulls and they're lovely dogs. I see people online posting about how they love their dogs and how they're just broken up by this legislation. And I mean, I know that there's, because I guess a lot of mainstream media, I've seen things said where people are saying, oh, I support this kind of legislation because there's all these stories of pit bulls being violent. But then you're also getting stories of people like poisoning pit bulls. I heard a story, it's happened somewhere in Quebec, somebody actually poisoned some people's pit bulls. I guess because they're paranoid. I mean, it's horrible. And okay, now this is obviously, it's a very low sample size. We just started this poll out. We haven't been really going for long, but we're running a poll on Forget the Box. And we have asked 3 simple questions. Do you support Montreal's one simple question, do you support Montreal's pit bull ban? And unlike other polls where we've had some funny answers and this and that, this is just 3 very serious answers. The first choice is, and in first place with 82%. Now we need a lot more votes before we send this to the mayor, for example. We tweet this and we tag the mayor. We need to have a lot more votes. So if you haven't voted yet, go and vote on forgetthebox.net. But so far in the lead at 82% is no, I do not support Montreal's proposed ban on pit bulls. Then with 14% is yes, and 5%, this is really horrible, I support breed-specific legislation, but this is the wrong way to do it, meaning they prefer like the Quebec City model, which is you have to get rid of your dogs. Which at least Montreal's not doing that. But I don't know, just, you guys think that do you think there's a chance, or do you think the media is just too much against, do you think there's a chance that the public can actually get this overturned?
I feel like, I don't know, I'm not sure if the public will be able to overturn any laws, because that's usually very difficult, but the stories about pit bulls, they're basically, like, I've heard this story, like, I've heard about like the dangerous breed of pit bulls a lot, and this is like an ongoing myth, and I don't exactly know why we're talking about, you know, this pit bull ban right now, but this is basically the city reacting to this ongoing myth that is like misplaced.
Yeah, well, there was one specific death that the police thought might have had to do with a pit bull, somebody found in their backyard. But now, if it was a pit bull, I doubt it was a stray pit bull. If anything, it was probably, I mean, there's a story of some guy who tried to use his dog to attack somebody, to kill somebody. Like, I would blame the owner in that case. If somebody weaponizes their dog, it's not the dog's fault. Like, it's not the gun's fault. It's the person who pulled the trigger, right?
That's
mean, a dog is a dog. It's like, if the dog is trained to be violent, then it's the owner's fault. They're the one who should be held responsible.
Exactly, and I mean, it's like a vicious circle, because the pit bulls have this reputation. Then people who want a dog that's going to be aggressive, that's going to scare people off, are going to buy pit bulls. Mm-hmm. And if you look at the places that have banned pit bulls, because they did it in Ontario, they did it in some cities in Manitoba, what happens, they weren't able to prove that the dog bites or that the dog-related deaths decreased, but when they did, they immediately went back up after, because what happens is that those people just gonna choose another breed.
Yeah.
And they're gonna raise them to be aggressive too. So the problem, I think the data supports the fact that it's the owner that is the problem, not the breed at all.
And some owners, this is something, I'm a cat person. I've never owned a dog, but one thing I know is dogs are extremely loyal animals. They are extremely loyal to their owners. And I would even understand not making the dog aggressive, but like the fact if the concept of a pit bull is scary to some people, then somebody maybe doesn't feel safe going out and needs to at least have people not like do any bad thing to them, like to walk around for example, the rough neighborhoods, someone walking alone at night or something like that wants to walk with their pit bull, they might feel safer. And I think that's actually an okay use of the scariness of the dog. But like, as long as you don't turn the dog into a violent weapon, like, and I don't know. I mean, Denis Coderre is not the bright. Like honestly, I think he sometimes he completely ignores public opinion, as we'll talk a little bit later in this podcast. But I think he can be swayed by public opinion. So I think things like filling out these polls, I think keeping the story active until September, maybe getting the opposition against it. I don't know what Projet Montréal said about it yet. But the thing too is, if this ban doesn't happen in Montreal, Quebec provincially is looking at doing it. Mm-hmm. I know there's also a petition against at the federal level trying to ban they're trying to have a federal ban on banning specific breeds, which I think is a good thing. There's also, I think, in the States, Barack Obama came out against breed-specific legislation.
Yes, because the experts, from the veterinary backgrounds or animal care backgrounds, all the experts are saying that breed-specific legislation makes no sense. But about the public opinion, I am not sure that all the public opinion is on the right side. I mean, people got really scared. There have been so much media spinning of this story with the pit bull that attacked this woman and the one who was found in her backyard, that people are scared. They're thinking about this really horrible death that happened, and they're not looking at the facts. And I think the politicians are just playing up to that fear instead of trying to be rational about it.
Politicians playing along with people's fear is nearly, although this is heartbreaking if it does come through, it's nearly nowhere near breaking news. And speaking of politicians playing into people's fears, or people's fears overplaying politicians, we're going to talk about what just happened in the UK in our news segment. So, and now the news. And now with our news roundup, let's start in the UK. Jem.
Right, so the United Kingdom recently voted to leave the European Union, although that doesn't mean that they have left the EU just yet. It's going to take much longer than that. According to the EU's internal regulations, the UK and the EU need to kind of like negotiate their conditions, and then there needs to be all the member states of the European Union technically need to approve the United Kingdom's decision to leave the European Union. But obviously, that would be it would be very interesting if they refuse to let the UK leave, especially after considering the fact that one of the reasons why people might want to leave the EU is because it's very anti-democratic. But obviously, there are a lot of other reasons why people have voted to leave the EU. One of the most obvious ones is basically the xenophobia and the anti-immigrant sentiment that is increasing in the UK, and it actually kind of became more manifest recently with a lot of attacks on, Polish immigrants in parts of England.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. See, the thing for me with the EU is, I mean, I understand there are reasons to want to leave, and there are some legitimate reasons, for example, curbing the power of corporations, the corruption of the EU, and also it's a big blow in the face of neoliberalism, which is always a good thing in my book. But the fact that it was sold on the basis of racism and xenophobia, that's really, it's a downer that actually got validated to a certain extent. And we're seeing the fallout right now. I mean, David Cameron left, which is good. David Cameron's no longer the Prime Minister of England, or he's not going to be the Prime Minister for much longer. But now Jeremy Corbyn, the Labour Party, is using this as an excuse to push him out, which really he had nothing. It wasn't his fault at all. He campaigned against it. He refused to accept the racism. But the thing is that majority of the people in the party are against him leaving. But a majority of the MPs want him to leave. So yeah, that's another fallout of that as well too.
That's right. And economically speaking, the pound dropped so fast. It was like the largest drop in the past 30 years. They almost reached parity with the US dollar. And so yeah, but what's really interesting to me is, and obviously it's probably because this was reported a lot of the people were regretting their vote, apparently, saying that they did not really expect their vote to count, which is really interesting to me, because, usually when people say, oh, my vote is not going to count, and then that it ends up actually not counting, perhaps, because in the case of a federal election, you're like, oh, it's the lesser of all evils, but in the case of the UK, people weren't apparently expecting to leave the European Union. So I find that interesting. What do you guys think?
I think it's really a proof that the campaign was catering to the people's feelings and not their rational minds, and they were gathering to their fears and all this talk. And the referendum, actually, people didn't really vote to leave the EU. I think they voted to support UKIP. I think it's what it says, and now they just now realize that it means leaving the EU. And what leaving the EU entails.
Yeah, and that people were Googling. I mean, I heard that
Yeah.
that might not be that true a statistic, but apparently a lot of people were Googling what is the EU the next day.
Yeah.
And, but I mean, yeah, the thing is, and then Boris Johnson decided he's not going to run.
I know.
He's not going to run for prime minister. Apparently, there was a little bit of inside politics there, a little inside baseball, as they call it. But a little bit closer to home, we had another sort of thing about countries merging together with the Three Amigos Summit.
Exactly, totally different from it's a tale of continental friendship, I think. It was the three leaders of North America, so Barack Obama for the United States, Justin Trudeau for Canada, and Enrique Nieto for Mexico. They met in Ottawa last week for 3 days. They talked about a lot of stuff, but mostly it was the climate talks that were important. Especially one commitment by Mexico and Washington, when the US, to have by 2025, to have 50% of their electricity sourced from renewable sources. And that's a really big commitment for them, because I think both of those countries I'm not sure about the exact number, but it's around between 15% and 20% of their electricity sourced from renewable sources at the moment. It's good news for Canada, because Canada has almost 60% of its energy sourced from renewable sources, mainly in Quebec. Quebec is a big producer of hydroelectricity, right? So that puts us at a very big advantage, because we can then export clean energy, clean electricity. So it's an economic advantage, and of course it's good news for the environment, right?
But what are the chances of this staying in effect? I mean, is this going to stay in effect even if the U.S. changes administrations?
Well, the commitment is signed, so
Yeah.
it should, unless the next president really literally goes back on their word. It wouldn't be a first for a president to do that, but we're hoping that they'll be too ashamed to literally go back in their words so drastically.
Yeah. I mean, I saw some of the speeches. I thought it was nice to see the three of them together. But I mean, also they were ignoring. There are some huge human rights problems in Mexico right now, though, which weren't acknowledged.
There was a lot of activists and activist groups that were angry about how little talks were about human rights. And they thought that the talks should be centered around that, especially that right now in Mexico there's a lot of unrest. There's the teachers' union are protesting, and there's been some death in the protests.
Yeah.
And it's really shady. It's not the first time that police forces are accused of murder.
Yeah, well,
to say it that way might seem a bit extreme, but
that's not just it's not just an international problem. I mean, that's a local problem too, to a certain extent. Police and murder, and there was a recent ruling in Ontario, right? Or a statement by the Ombudsman of Ontario. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Exactly. Well, that was interesting, because it's rare for institutional flaws to be pointed out like this to the police, right? And the Ontario Ombudsman had a 3-year-long investigation on police intervention in Ontario, and he came to the conclusion that the police forces in Ontario knew very well how to use their guns, but not how to use their mouth, and that they were resorting too often to violent techniques and didn't know how to de-escalate situation. He said, he was really clear that he was not critical of the police, but of the police training. But he was really, really critical about it. He said that many situations became violent when they shouldn't have been, just because policemen were too quick to draw their weapons. They weren't taught how to de-escalate the situation and address, especially when they were intervening with people with mental illness that were often in crisis.
It's a Quebec thing too, right? It's not just in...
Exactly. Like, the thing is, in Canada, we don't have... nobody keeps track of police shootings. We don't have those numbers. There's no federal statistics about it, and it's only civil right organizations and NGOs that keep track of it. So media and citizens have to rely on that. And those NGOs found that nowadays it's around 40% of people killed by the police that are mentally ill. So that's a worrying statistic.
It's a problem.
It's a huge problem. I mean, at least there's but another huge problem. I mean, trading PK Subban. I mean, that was it's a completely different jump. Okay, that's completely not as serious. But I mean, how could the Habs be so? I mean, I know it's a good hockey trade, but or it's an okay hockey trade. It's a superstar for a superstar. But think about it. They traded somebody who was well loved by the community just for apparently being in maybe not getting along with the coach or what have you.
Right.
You guys don't have that much of an opinion on it. You're not hockey people, but also at least it's not as dumb as, for example, the tree stumps on Mount Royal.
Oh God.
Yeah, just refresh this up. Just set this up. Denny Coderre decided to put $3.5 million fake plastic tree stumps on Mount Royal. In the place of, I guess, just maybe spending a few $100 on the park bench. Now, I'm all for, comfortable places to sit on the mountain, but this makes it worse. This is corruption, but it's not even appealing. It's not, you don't want to look at fake nature when you're in the middle of real nature.
Exactly.
And it's spending so much money for our 375th anniversary and really, really for nothing. But, at least there's some fun stuff happening in Quebec or Montreal this summer. Enzo Sabbagha has an interview with the band. Let's listen to that now.
June 24th was Quebec Day, and what a better way to celebrate than with some good local music. That's why I headed out to La Sala Rosa to check out La Fête Nationale, an event curated and headlined by a local band, the Feedbackers. Also featuring opening acts Juliana and Jesse, and previously featured on Forget the Box, The Holds. I sat down with the Feedbackers a few days later to talk about the show, their music, and their upcoming projects. Hi guys! Hello. Hey there! Thanks so much for letting us speak with you today. Wow, what a great show. That was really awesome. I really had a great time. Thanks for inviting me. And before we get into that, let me just get a quick presentation of you guys.
Yeah, sure. I'm Mike. I'm lead singer and guitarist for the Feedbackers.
I'm Chris Renault. I hit things loudly. I'm the drummer.
I'm Antoine. I play guitar and backup vocals.
I'm Jorge Flores and I play bass, piano, and backup vocals.
Nice. Now, I heard the band started in 2013. Mike, could you tell us a bit about your progress and how you've seen yourself progress through the years?
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, we started as myself, Renaud, and Jorge. We started with another singer in another project. And slowly but surely we sort of transitioned towards stuff that was more in our own musical preference, field of expertise. Before it was pop, then we were starting to graduate slowly towards the rock element. I started bringing some of my own compositions to these guys, and they helped shape them and model them. And then at one point, Antoine appeared mysteriously at practice after Jorge invited him without our knowing, and he had ended up learning a couple of the songs that I had written, and worked out a couple of parts for them, and just wowed us at practice. So since that day, he's been guitarist for the Feedbackers.
Now I gotta say, I know Antoine, and I know how good of a guitarist he is and how professional he is. Antoine, tell us a bit about the last show you did that I really, really enjoyed again. La Fête Nationale was the name of the event. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah. Well, that show was in a pretty awesome place, La Sala Rosa. It was a really big stage, really big room. We had a lot of people that came out to see us, so it was really a big deal for us, and we knew that it was going to be a big deal, so we really prepared it a lot for the past month or so, I want to say. Yeah, for a month. We've been practicing for that show for about a month, and we've been working on a lot of different stuff, new material, new songs, working on some new choreographies as well during the show. Just working on all of that really intensely during the last couple of weeks, especially before the show.
Well, that really showed in your performance.
Thank you.
There was a lot other bands that were part of the show. There was the Holes and there was Juliana and Jesse, who we actually auditioned in kind of a contest. Renaud, if you can tell us a bit about this.
Yes, absolutely. Actually, it was our manager Carlos's idea. And what we did was we hosted a battle of the bands, and we got a bunch of local acts, much like ourselves, who were really just trying to get to that next level, get to the bigger venues, really just get people to hear their sound. And Juliana and Jesse were part of them, and they showed up as a three-piece. They were missing their drummer, did not stop them whatsoever. They wowed everybody in the crowd. They got the vote. They got there to play for us, and I mean, we don't regret it. They were absolutely phenomenal.
They put on quite a spectacular performance, honestly, and it's a sort of a testament towards how much we love playing with the local acts, in the sense that we're always looking to play with the local community, the local music community, develop ourselves within that musical community in Montreal. We're always looking for bands to play with in
really
terms of Montreal. It's what it's about.
Yeah.
It's really about the spirit of music.
Yeah, and that's what we try to do here on Forget the Box, feature local acts. Jorge, something that I really loved about the concert is your energy on stage. And
It's the best part of the show.
But that really blended really well with all the details that you put into the show. The really, really cool intro that you did with projectors and lights and everything. You had some songs that had some choreography in it with you and Antoine and even Mike. You did some stuff that were spontaneous. That was great as well. You really, really get up there and you take away the stage and you do your thing. How did you came up with these ideas, and why do you want to add these details at such a fresh stage from in your band experience?
Okay, pretty much the way we write the song also involves the way we perform the song. Like, it's not just, okay, this is a cool song and that's it. Like, in order to really portray the song on a live stage, there needs to be some sort of performance aspect to it that really brings the song equally from the musical aspect to the live aspect. And I mean, recording it's cool, and it's cool that bands can do that, but also a live show, it's a different kind of thing that I don't feel that it's always well attained, the capabilities that you can achieve on your own material. So anyways, as well as we're writing the song, we're really writing the steps.
Yeah.
And that really projects through to the audience. About your songs, your original songs, that's also something that I loved, is that you didn't do many covers. You did mostly your own material.
Sure.
And there was a lot of it. How do you come up with the subjects, with the topics behind the songs, and what inspires you the most?
Well, as the primary lyricist for the band, I guess you could say that. I sort of think of what my own experiences in life sort of reflect, and I just take it from there. There's some songs about love, about heartbreak. There's some songs about the injustice that we see going on day to day, and some songs about the way we can sort of just open our eyes and see it, not necessarily change the world from the little guy's perspective, but just open our eyes to what the world is actually. So we at least become aware of it. It's always step one of the process, and then from there I just take about how I would feel on that issue, how I would develop on that, and how I would look at it.
Before we go, I just want to ask you about your future projects. What's coming up for the Feedbackers, and what's there for the future?
Well, we got one coming out, one show coming up on the 15th of July at Hémisphère Gauche. We've got another one on the 19th of August at Au Patrovis. We're definitely looking forward to those two. We got some big announcements coming up for about September, October-ish region. Can't give you any hints yet, but stay tuned for some pretty big news for that.
That's exciting. And for the people who want to be up on your updates, your website, your Facebook page, anything?
www.feedbackers.com, the facebook.com/thefeedbackersband, Reverb Nation, YouTube, Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, everything you want. We did it all for you guys.
Mike said, we're the great Coco community out there.
Okay, we'll try to include as much as we can. on the bottom of the screen here. And
Full
make sure
text,
to check out
read
the
for days,
feedbackers.
stalling. Just
Just the full credits of our...
Thank you guys so much for letting me do this. That was my first interview with the band on video. That was great. Thank you, and I guess I'll see you at your next show for sure. I'll be there cheering for you. And yeah, thank you. See you next.
Thank you, Enzo.
Thank you, Enzo, for that interview with the feedbackers. And now that's one of the many acts that's performing this summer. There's a lot of arts going on. Right now, the Jazz Fest is happening downtown. I haven't checked that out in a few years. Are you checking that out? And you guys checking the Jazz Fest out?
I've seen the article on the Forget the Box about it. Some really good suggestions there.
Yes, good to see some free outside shows. And of course, FTB is going to be covering very soon the Just for Laughs festival as well, too.
That's right.
Jen, maybe tell us a little bit about that.
Well, Just for Laughs is, as always, there's like so many funny people are coming to Montreal, as they have been for I don't know how many years, but a lot of years. And, you know, there is Sarah Silverman coming. There is Carrie Fisher, who's doing a gala. There's Jay Farrow coming, who you might know from SNL. He's very famous for his Obama impressions. There is Aziz Ansari coming. He's doing, I think it's a panel with the cast from Master of None. There's, of course, the roast master, Jeff Ross, is coming, who was, you might have seen him on many shows, but including the one, Donald Trump's roast. He was there.
Oh, good.
He had hair back then. He's bald now.
There's also Bernie versus Trump, right?
That's right.
That's a little bit of I guess, a fantasy debate that we're maybe not going to actually get to see in politics, but we get to see two comedians do
That's
it.
right. So that's going to be definitely very interesting.
I like the fact that Princess Leia is coming.
Oh yes.
And Sarah Silverman.
That's right.
Sarah Silverman, what's the sci-fi angle with Sarah Silverman? Do you know it?
No, really. Tell me.
She was in a two-parter episode of Star Trek Voyager called Future's End, where she played a human from the 90s, who helps the crew out who come back from the future, and she has a little love tryst with Tom Paris. I forget her character's name, but that's what I think of. That and her support of Bernie Sanders in great hilarious videos is what I think of when I think of Sarah Silverman. So there's that. There's Oshiaga coming up.
There's Oshiaga coming up, indeed.
We're checking out just for any festivals you plan on checking out.
I think there's a circus festival coming to
Circus
Montreal.
festival, yeah.
Yeah. I think it's starting on the 7th, and it's got to be about 10 days. So probably some juggling. I don't know what's going to be exactly, but worth checking out.
I mean, circus on the streets should be an interesting thing, you know. Maybe people walking on like those poles.
Montreal is a circus, people say in the summertime. Montreal can be kind of like a circus in general. There's also the construction festival happening.
That's right, on McTavish and Sherbrooke.
Yeah. It's all over the city. There's different locations. Like for a while there, they had a little bit of presence in my neighborhood, Shaughnessy Village. There's usually some spots in the plateau.
There's some up on Mile End.
In Mile End.
On my way to work.
Yeah. That's a big festival in the summer.
Always.
And of course, there's Fantasia coming up. We're going to cover that on the site as well, too.
Mm-hmm.
That's always a good. You probably already know this if you live in Montreal, but I don't know if you're excited about summer festivals. We're going to be covering a lot of them on Forget the Box, and with some I don't know. I guess JFL's become one of my more favorite festivals since I've been covering it for the site. But
that's right. JFL it's always the best, and it's not always like the very mainstream people that is really funny. There's a lot of off JFL stuff, and I went to a lot of off JFL stuff last year, but there's also one interesting show called the Montreal Show, which is obviously going to be featuring local Montreal comedians. And there's also, again, this year, the Ethnic Show, and this time the host of the Ethnic Show is Rashid Badouri, who did his, I think, first English stand-up routine last year, again, at JFL.
Yeah.
And he's a very funny guy.
Oh,
his face.
Well, you interviewed him, right? You interviewed all of the people who were.
I was actually one of the people that I wasn't able to interview.
Oh, okay. So you missed the chance.
I did miss the chance. Maybe this time.
Yeah, you can read some coverage of this on Forget the Box, of course, and of course, festival season's coming up. We're all very happy, and there's some stuff coming up just in the next 2 weeks. So we're going to be back with predictions in a bit, but right now, here's our community calendar.
Keeper Concordia has extended their deadline to July 12th for practical guides and articles for the Activist Day Planner, School Shmuel. School Shmuel is the name of the Activist Day Planner for students at Concordia, McGill, and the wider Montreal community that includes engaging articles, resources, and practical tools for students and non-students alike to participate in social and environmental justice activism. Call for submissions ends July 12th. Kick Drum Festival begins July 12th to July 17. In response to the many festivals that bring international talent and expensive tickets, the Kick Drum Festival features local talents and cheaper shows. Full festival pass is $23 and change. Full listings at kickdrum.info. The Ouroboros Community Group is hosting a workshop called Rebuilding Reciprocal Relationships, July 12. The 3-hour workshop is designed to increase participants' self-awareness of power dynamics and energy flow in their relationships, and is based on the understanding that femmes and women are often exploited and labor often unrecognized. Pre-registration is required. Solidarity City has released a call for solidarity for the 2-month reprieve for Lacados family. The government postponed the deportation of 17-year-old Gilda Lacados and her mother Catalin Lacados for another 2 months. After Gilda and Catalin courageously spoke out, countless community members and organizations responded, demanding that ministers of public safety and immigration stop their deportation. For more details on how to support, visit www.solidarityacrossborders.org.
Thank you, Anna, for the community calendar. And now, predictions.
I predict that Sarah Silverman or really any of the big comedians making a surprise appearance at one of the off-JFL shows.
I predict Germany's gonna win the Euro this year.
I predict that Mayor Denis Coderre is going to make a last-ditch effort to sell his fake plastic tree stumps by naming one of them after PK Subban.
I predict that a movie will be announced within the next few weeks about the Brexit, and the director is going to be Michael Bay, and the explosions will be about the drop of the pound.
I predict that next year, the Three Amigos Summit is going to be part of the Montreal Cirque Festival with their burlesque numero of a three-way handshake.
And I predict that after Donald Trump becomes president, he's going to insist that the next Three Amigos Summit be replaced by a screening of the movie Three Amigos with Steve Martin and Martin Short. Amigos forever! It's a good movie. It's from the 80s. All right, so I think, or the early 90s possibly. Okay, so thank you very much. Jem and Mirna, you can read both of them on Forget the Box. This camera. Okay, you can read both of them on Forget the Box. News and Just for Laughs coverage. I want to thank you, and we'll catch you in 2 weeks for the next FTB podcast. The FTB podcast by the Forget the Box Media Collective in Montreal was hosted by Jason C. McLean and produced by Hannah Besseau. For daily, unique, original content covering news, music, politics, arts, lifestyles, food, film, you name it, we've got it. Check out Forget the Box.